So earlier today, the New York Times published an interview with AOC, with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, where she talked about the fact that Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee, but how there remains a lot of work for Biden to do if he wants to win this election with the support of young people, of Latinos, and of the broader progressive movement. I think this is a great interview because much like we've been doing on this channel, since Biden's become the nominee, we haven't been trying to help Donald Trump as some neoliberals are suggesting, but rather we don't want to see Trump win either. And if Biden is going to be the candidate, he needs to be as strong as he possibly can. That's the simple reality. And if he's making blatant errors with regard to how he reaches out to the left, to Latinos, to young people, to the working class, then it's incumbent upon us to point these facts out. Lying for Joe Biden, especially months and months and months before the election, helps no one but Donald Trump and the Republicans, because the Biden campaign wouldn't have had time to potentially face up to the truth. And AOC in this interview does a fantastic job of showcasing Joe Biden's weaknesses. The headline of this video was about how Biden's plan was insulting to the left, insulting to progressives. And it really ties into Biden's plan to lower Medicare accessibility. Currently, you have to be 65. Biden's concession to Bernie, that's what it was portrayed as in the media. His concession to Bernie was to lower eligibility age from 65 to 60. But AOC is right in calling that insulting, because even Hillary Clinton planned to lower it to either 50 or 55 back in 2016. And her plan was seen as wholly insufficient to win over the left, who wanted everyone, regardless of age, to have access to the Medicare system. Medicare for all. Medicare for more is, I suppose, a move in the right direction, but it's not Medicare for all. It's not Medicare for pretty much everyone. It's not Medicare for most. It's Medicare for slightly more. That is not good enough. That's not a concession to Bernie. And if, as I've been noting, and AOC's been noting, and Michael Moore has been noting, and so many others have been noting, Joe Biden is struggling with young people, then yet another policy that's tailor-made to help boomers isn't actually going to reach young people. In fact, they might feel rather insulted, in AOC's words, by that, because you're giving yet another benefit to the boomer generation that isn't accessible to young people. And hypothetically, of course, when you turn 60 yourself, you'll have access to this, but that's 20, 30, 40 years away for some of these people, and that's not good enough because they need health insurance that they can afford and that actually covers them now, not 20, 30, 40 years from now. That's just the simple truth. And so AOC is really trying to suggest here that Joe Biden is the nominee, but he hasn't done the work to represent the values of the party. And the interviewer addresses this fact by suggesting that, hey, Biden won the nomination, so to a certain degree, hasn't it proven that his, quote unquote, moderate approach is what could win this election? It's what the party wants. But AOC does a really good job, as many of us have, at exposing that reality. As Bernie and a lot of people have noted, it's clear that Joe Biden was the choice of Democratic Party voters. He was winning these contests often by comfortable margins. He won some contests that Bernie won 4 years ago. The people that were voting in these elections wanted Joe Biden. But the reason they picked Joe Biden was not because they love public options, or because they love his center-right policy, or because they love his history of, backing Social Security cuts and his history of backing the Iraq War. No, they love Joe Biden because of his connection to Barack Obama, which a lot of people feel gives him credibility, and they love Joe Biden because they feel, whether it's accurate or not, that he's the one to defeat Donald Trump. But he does not represent the party's values, because in exit poll after exit poll, the progressive movement's policies, Green New Deals, Medicare for All, and many others, were supported by a majority of Democratic voters. So, even states that voted for Joe Biden wanted Bernie's policies. And so it's undeniable that Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee, and that gives him a mandate to be the Democratic candidate. But if Biden and his campaign are thinking reasonably and are looking at the data before them, at the primary contest that just unfolded and continues to unfold, but the primary process that is seen as being complete, they have to admit that they didn't win because of people's love for Biden's policies. They like him as a person to lead the party to defeat Donald Trump. And so the left is suggesting that you need to represent the party's values because you can combine that with their love for you as an anti-Trump juggernaut and win this election. And that if you don't reach out to these groups, that didn't support you as much as they supported Bernie, and if you don't support the policies that a majority of Democrats support, and that in cases like Medicare for All, a majority of the population now supports, Morning Consult, I covered this a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, where 55% of Americans and a majority of independents now support Medicare for All, then you're setting yourself up for defeat. So AOC is really centering what needs to be done. Biden's probably going to be the nominee. Like, whether we like it or not, he is. So the question is, how do you make him a nominee that reflects the values of the party and sets him up to defeat Donald Trump? And he's not doing that through his milquetoast neoliberal policies. He's not going to do it. And the fact is, as this piece notes, AOC has never been contacted by Joe Biden. He has not reached out. She says that Joe Biden has never spoken to her as far as she's aware. That responsibility falls to Joe Biden. That's a lapse of Joe Biden's effort to build the quote-unquote unity coalition that he supposedly was the only one that could do. That if you're not reaching out to AOC, one of the young, dynamic, progressive leaders in the House of Representatives, you are failing to forge that unity. This is not only because AOC is so well known, she's one of the best fundraisers at the congressional level, and because, she's a Bernie Sanders surrogate in a sense, so it could show that you're building ties to the Bernie movement. It also matters that she's young and she's Latina. And those are two groups, as AOC notes here, that Bernie Sanders clearly did well with and Joe Biden did not. And those groups, even if Biden didn't need them to win the nomination, will need them to win the presidency, and the Democrats will need them to win the Senate and keep the House. We're looking at a man that is the presumptive nominee, that clearly has a base of support in the party, but he's at risk of misunderstanding what that support is built upon. It's built upon electability, but not neoliberal policy. Right? The majority of the party supports Bernie Sanders' policy vision, or at least key elements of Bernie Sanders' policy vision. And if Biden wants to win this election, and if he wants to defeat Donald Trump and usher in a progressive, regime that will bring America forward, he needs to do a lot more to reach people like AOC. Policies that people like AOC and policies that the majority of young Democrats see as insulting won't get the job done. We don't want Trump as president in November, and so it's on Biden to make sure that every single young person, that every single Latino, that every single person part of the Bernie demographics feels that they can go vote in November, not just to defeat Donald Trump, but actually elect something worthwhile.